guys, welcome to the Best Practices Show podcast. My name is Kirk Behrendt. I'm your host today, and we are always taking a look at the best practices from the best practices all over the world. And today, do I have a treat for you? A good friend of ours, actually, David, you and I have met, I think, once, and we're meeting together for twice. But some of you already know David Moffet from the other side of the world, and gosh, he's got some great perspective, and I know you're going to enjoy this. And today, we're going to be talking about the 5 essential numbers you need to run your practice efficiently in 2021. And he has a lot of experience. He and his wife are incredible key opinion leaders on the other side of the world. And you're going to love this. So do me a favor, grab a pen and hit the share button, settle in. You're going to ultimately learn a ton. Now, if you're a young dentist, listen to this for the first time. We have a lot of students, a lot of young people that are just getting involved with dentistry or just graduating from dental school. I just want to do 2 things. Number one, I want to welcome you to a community. We just welcome you here. We don't have any egos here. We're just all learning together. We're just committed to learning. And I just want to congratulate you for showing up. Number 2, I want to encourage you to subscribe. So wherever you consume podcasts, whether it be Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, whatever, just hit that little button that says subscribe, and then you'll see every single week we're going to bring you another key opinion leader in dentistry and just bring you whatever they see as some of the best things in best practices in dentistry so that you can create a better practice and a better life. There's unbelievable resources out there, just like today when you meet David, and dentistry is just an incredibly noble profession. We just love doing this. Also, we take a lot of show notes here. So as you can see, everything David and I talk about, I've got a great team behind me. I mean, not literally right now, but a great team. And they'll actually write up all the notes. So everything David mentions, we're going to talk about his Ultimate Dental Report today, which is a fantastic resource. You're going to see there'll just be a link. So if you're listening to the podcast right now and you're hearing David say something, just go to the show notes. There's a link. It's already prepared for you. You just click on it. It'll take you right to the resource. We want learning to be as easy as possible. So I want to introduce my guest. David, you and I have met one time. I think it was at the Maddow Brothers thing was it the Vegas one?
It was in Vegas. Yes, that's right, Kirk. Yeah.
I don't remember. You go.
Yeah, you were on stage and you just had me captivated, especially that Jack Nicholson impersonation.
There's not many things I could do well, but that was fun time. I mean, those guys always do something incredible. And I've been a fan of yours for a while. So your book, you've got you're a social media expert. I love watching your social media posts, even your photos that you do like on Instagram. I'm like, that's a cool photo. And I would love for people to know who you are. Every time we have a guest on, I want them to know who they're talking to. So, David, tell us who you are. And then I also want you to mention your wife too. She's also the #1 phone consultant in all of, is it Australia? You tell
Australia,
us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead. Who's David Moffet?
So, Kirk, I'm David Moffet. I'm a retired dentist now from Sydney, Australia, and I'm 61 years old. Had a long career in dentistry. When I left my practice, I had spent 28 years in the one location in that practice. And at that time, that was just over a touch over half my life working in that one location, which kind of scary. But I learned a lot from being in one location. And I had friends in dentistry who used to move around. And what I found with them was that they never knew how good their dentistry was or how bad their dentistry was because they weren't around long enough to see it fail. So 28 years in one location, you kind of know what's coming back and what's not coming back. And, you can then base your premise on how good you are on how much, return work. So sometimes I talk to dentists and they say, well, we're not taking any new patients. Well, I'm thinking, well, you're obviously redoing a lot of your old work. How is that? Or you haven't done that work. Because what I learned 28 years in one location was that if you wanted to take vacation, you wanted to make sure that your work lasted at least as long as the vacation so that people weren't ringing up in pain. When I first started working back in the early 80s, we used to turn up on a Monday morning at my boss's office. There were 6 people in the waiting room. And I say, what's with the 6 people in the waiting room, man? That throws the schedule out. He says, 10 years ago, it used to be 20 people in the waiting room. And another 10 years before that, it was 50 people in the waiting room on a Monday morning. I'm going, no, that's not the way to run a dental practice. So I I had a very simple philosophy to my practice, and that was to do the best for my patients, but to also make it not about the dentistry, but about an experience. And so we reverse engineered what a dental practice did by looking at what the practice did for the patients, or what the patients were experiencing. We wrote our manuals, our service manuals, from the patient's perspective, looking through their eyes back at the practice. And that was kind of out of left field at the time when I did that back in 2010. And that was the premise for my book, How to Build the Dental Practice of Your Dreams Without Killing Yourself in Less Than 60 Days. One of the longest titles you could ever put on a dental book. But the book became an Amazon bestseller 37 months in a row. It's got more 5-star ratings, way more than any other book in the dental office management section of Amazon. Even Howard's book's not up there, and Howard loves that book. So if you haven't got that book, go and get that on Amazon, or you can get it on my website as well. But I built my practice, Kurt, in a working class part of Western Sydney, where people drove average cars, had average jobs, lived in average homes, and earned average incomes. But yet we charged top dollar, and nobody balked at the prices that we were charging, because they were getting more than just the dentistry. And that was the exciting part about what we did. Sadly, as we were talking before, I sold my practice. I sold my practice because of the liability that a practice can have if you die or if you get ill. And I saw that. When I was in my early 50s, a friend of mine who was 58 dropped dead in his own practice. And I remember talking to his wife, and she, it was like watching The Price is Right. The meter was just ticking down. As she was talking to me, the value of the practice was just going down and down. And I thought, I can't do that to my family for whatever reason. Nobody knows. When you have friends who, just for whatever reason, I had a friend who was diagnosed with a brain tumor. He was dead in 3 weeks at 64. I had another friend who had at the age of 60, had a renal tumor. He got 5 months. That's really hard, selling a practice. And I tried selling my practice way back in 1996. And it's not like selling a house, where you sell a house and you say, this is a great house. Look how good this house is, and nice neighborhood. And these are the really good neighbors, and this is a really good street. When you go to sell a practice, you say, this is a great practice, and all my dentist neighbors, they're all doing bad, and this is what I'm doing to get patients ahead of them. And you tell that to someone, and guess what they do? They say, nice practice, Dave. I'm going to go and set up next door to you with all the information you just told me. And I had that happen 3 times in 1996. So I just said, that's not working. So that was 1996. I was looking at other non-dental business interests. And so I thought, well, maybe I should just focus on my practice. So 1997, I hired a consultant. 6 years later, the end of 2002, my practice had tripled in turnover and grown. At the end of 2007, when I sold the practice but stayed on, it doubled again. And then in the next 4 years of those 7 years, or 4 or 5 years, it then went up another 33% from the doubled number. So it was, started off at 120,000 a year. Where at its peak, it was doing 3.4 million. So, I guess I was doing something right.
Yes, you were.
So
yeah. Go back.
I miss it.
Yeah, because you're a consultant, you and your wife, and then I'm also a coach here. You know how this is. I can't afford a coach. I can't afford a consultant. David, you hear this all the time. Like, when you were practicing, how important was the value of a coach? Now that you're a coach, what do you say to people that say, I can't afford a coach?
It's absolutely crazy, Kirk, because that coach that helped me triple the practice, that was actually my second coach. My first coach, I didn't get on with it at all. It was like, this is wrong. This is wrong. But it wasn't that coaching was wrong. It was just that he was wrong for my practice. And my second coach, really crazy story. I got invited to an evening meeting at a hotel, and I just had laser eye surgery, not LASIK, but the PRK, the really brutal one that hurts and you can't see for a month out of it. And I said, look, I've just had laser eye surgery. I can't get there unless you've got somebody coming from out my way. And they said, well, we've got a guy coming from a neighboring suburb. And it was actually a mate of mine. And I didn't know that. So he drove me in and drove me out. And he and I said, what are you going to do? And I said, I think I'll give these guys a go. And so we both hired this coach from another city. And in the 6 years, we both improved our practices. But here's the kicker, Kurt, because we didn't end up with the same practice 6 years down the track. We ended up with different practices to each other. We started with different practices, and we both ended up with better practices, but they were practices that we wanted, not practices that our coach wanted for us. So that's how I like to coach. I just don't turn up and say, well, I've got the Moffet cookie cutter approach, and in the end, you're all, everybody's going to have a Moffet practice. No, I help different dentists, utilize their skills to determine what they want. If they want a CEREC machine, they can have a CEREC machine. If they don't want a CEREC machine, I support them on that decision as well. My job is to stop them making mistakes and ending up, in way off course. But coaching to me is like it's a necessary thing. Like if you want to get fit, you really need a personal trainer to keep you accountable. If you want to lose weight for a wedding and then put the weight straight back on, just do it yourself. That's the same. Just try and fix things yourself. But go to seminars, take good notes, put the notes on the front desk. 2 weeks later, they're on a shelf. That's called shelf help. That doesn't work. And you say, why are we doing that stuff that I learned 2 weeks ago? Because you haven't got anybody keeping you accountable.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. I just always think it's just too hard to self-govern. I would never want to just try to figure this stuff out on my own. And it's too hard. I mean, there's too many things to focus on. And you talk about like some of the critical things that coaches make you do. And you and I were talking before we went live, like there's very important metrics, even beyond the pandemic. And today we're going to be talking about the 5 essential numbers. But before we get into the actual numbers themselves, David, let's talk about the why. Why are numbers important in dental practice from your perspective?
Well, the same reason why, Kirk, when we watch a football game, when we watch a baseball game, we want to know the result at the end. We can't just say, well, that's kids' sport now. Kids' sport. Well, the kids played well. Well, who won? Well, they lost 29-0, but they played well. Well, no, they really didn't.
Right.
In business, you can't go to the bank and say, well, I feel like my business is going okay, because numbers are the way of keeping score. We've got to know these important numbers because they identify trends before they happen, and they allow us to then predict rather than to react to things. And that's really, really important, because you can start something, and if you're tracking it and the numbers aren't working out, you can end it before it costs you a lot of money. But you can also ramp it up if you see that it is doing you a lot of good as well. So, I was very lucky in one of my early employment situations to be shown a very simple, logical paper and pen bookkeeping exercise, which is now the basis for computer day sheets. But within reason, sometimes computer day sheets can be really, really scary. The thing that scared me when we went from paper to computer was, in the production side, they list every fee for every item, but in the collection side, they only list the one payment. And so you don't know, if you've done 10 procedures, whether that one payment actually adds up to the 10 procedures. And I always wanted to know that whatever I did, I got paid for that day. That, as my staff do. You do a week's work, you get paid for a week's work. I'm not going to pay you for 2 days' work and you're doing a week, and then all of a sudden I pick it back up 3 months down the track. But in dentistry, that's what our profession has allowed itself to slip into. Back in the day when I started, Kirk, where they had the little sliding window. All right, because most people were just coming in to have an emergency tooth out. So the window was there to actually stop the patient spitting blood on you when they left. And you'd say, I'll send the bill, because you didn't want to be handling wipe their mouth and handling the bill. You didn't want that. But now, nobody's having teeth out anymore. There's no blood procedures. And with credit cards, people and tap now, people can just pay as they go. And so that is expected. but still our insurance companies or your insurance companies over there like to pay you 60, 90 days late for some reason. And I don't think that's fair.
Yeah, I have a quick question for you. Now, so you're in the other side of the world. How are insurance companies different in Australia than they are US? Is there any difference? Not much, pretty much the same. Is it a different game over there?
It's slightly different. My understanding of the US was back 15, 20 years ago, insurance for employees was a benefit. So, people would go to work for a firm and they would get their health insurance. Now it's not so much of an employment benefit, but back then, let's just, a one employer town might change its insurance, and all of a sudden the dentists are out of network and they lose their patients. Right. So over here, insurance is something that people pay out of their own pocket. And so what we forget sometimes is that these people can afford to pay, whether they're actually getting a benefit from it or not. They're actually paying it. I think they're paying it because they get a tax deduction, not for extras in dental, but for hospital, you get a tax deduction, and that help props up or takes the burden out of the public hospital system. But ultimately, it's a slippery slope for the insurance companies because they're getting less and less subscribers every year. So eventually, the world's going to come. We're going to end up back in a fee for service. Whether it's in my lifetime, I don't know. But that my philosophy is that whenever you put something or someone between the provider of the service and the person receiving the service, you end up with distortions, corruptions, and negligence that can happen. And that's what insurance does. That's what government does. And we end up, somebody comes and mows my lawn, I pay him to mow my lawn. That's it.
Right.
I don't have to go through insurance or the government,
Right.
But if he says, this guy's paying me 30, and you're paying him 40, why don't you pay me 35? And then we're both ahead, then all of a sudden, the middleman gets squeezed out. So, I'm all for getting rid of middlemen.
Yeah, I'm all about the small practitioner. I'll fight forever for the doctor who wants to be the entrepreneur and fee for service. And, I think you're spot on. Like the numbers don't lie, because we can debate them all we want. My kids come home, they have report cards. The numbers don't lie. They tell the performance. And I agree with you. I think we've gotten away from nobody wants to tell the truth. They're transparent. Numbers tell us how to make progress too. They give us insight. And today I want you to go through these. When we talked about these 5 numbers, I completely agree that these are critical numbers, but take us through each one, why they're important. And if I'm a young dentist watching, what would you say to me on each one of these numbers? So give us the first one. What's the first critical number?
Well, the first critical number, Kirk, is you've got to know how much work you're doing each day and how much you're collecting each day. And you've got to know that on a daily basis, a weekly basis, and a monthly basis. Now, just before we enter onto these 5 numbers, I just wanted to clarify, I coach small dental practices, the mum and pop cottage industry stuff. I'm not big on coaching, and I refuse to coach corporates because I don't believe that is what the population wants. Some of the population are happy to just go and get a different dentist every time, but for dentistry to still thrive and to provide an opportunity for dental graduates, I think that the opportunity of running your own business, somebody told me 40 years ago, it was the last bastion of free enterprise. And I still believe it is. And I think that while it is, and you're providing a service directly to your customers, you are a winner. So that I built my practice on that philosophy of service to my customers, and I coach dentists to do the same. Now, those numbers, daily, weekly, and monthly productions and collections. First, we already mentioned, you do a day's work, you want to get paid. So what used to really, get me upset was somebody said, you can't make them pay for a crown until the crown's glued into their mouth. And yet you spend 95% of the time prepping that tooth, taking impressions or scans now, and retracting and putting the crown on. That's just like flip off the temporary, seat the crown, bit of light cure, gone, and you don't get paid till the end. Now, I learned this from somebody who did a stamped driveway for me back in the early 90s. And he said, you're going to pay me 10% deposit now. You're going to pay me 80% a week before, and you're going to pay me 10% the day I pour the concrete. And I said, why is that? He said, because that's how I do it. And so I said, well, that's how I do it. If I'm doing 95% of the work, I expect them to pay me 100%. And that's how at the end of the crown prep, I just say, I've done 95% of the work today. Next visit's just a quick flick that crown off, glue the other one in. Only going to take a few minutes. And that 95%, when they go out, they say, do I have to pay today? Well, he's done 95% of the work. All right, pay it all. And so, because what you go on vacation, you come back and your front office person's booked you in 5 inserts in a row, and you've been sitting there holding them down for 3 minutes back in the old days. And you think, I've just worked the whole morning and nobody's, I'm getting paid now, and yet I should have been paid when I did all that work. And so that's important, because I wanted to make sure that, we weren't creeping behind. That can also happen if you're doing the work, but you're getting paid $2,000 less each day because somebody doesn't like to collect on you for you. All of a sudden you end up with a great accounts receivable, and you go, well, that's no good. I can't go to the bank and say, look, I need to borrow money because I've got this, accounts receivable up. So do a day's work, get a day's pay, and keep those numbers even. But more importantly, it allows you to forecast, not so much daily, but weekly. You can see, how was this week compared to last week? Monthly, how was this month compared to last month? How was this month compared to the same month last year? And you can forecast your trends. And you also should know how many days you're working in each month. And this is something I learned from the people who purchased my practice. They didn't realize, that you end up with 5 weekends in a month, and it affects the month compared to a month that has 4 weekends. So, we've just got to be able to balance that. And so in dentistry, you and I both know that we have to plan everything 6 months in advance, because that's when people are coming back, for their hygiene visits. And so we plan our vacations, we plan our education on that. We can't just say, I'm going to go and educate myself, cancel my books, because all that does is make those people cancel next time.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've got to respect their time. So anyway.
And most of the times it's not even about the money. It's a trust factor. And the more you do up front, the less you have to do later. With everything, the further in advance the payment is, the less the problem. I think that's powerful when you can, the other thing too, any business owner, the ultimate job of any leader is prediction. You got to predict the future as much as you possibly can. So when you're talking about the number of days or payments, absolutely. I totally agree. Those are numbers you got to just watch. And when you watch them, you can improve them. You can see trends. You can see what's working, what's not working. Now, number 2, I like your number 2 number. What's your second essential number?
Yeah, you got to know the number of phone calls coming into your dental practice, and that's all.
Wait, David, you hear this all the time. I know them all. We get them all, right? You ever hear that one? We get them all. We get it. We answer every call. We get them.
Yeah.
That true?
Well, no, it's absolutely not true. And my wife trains dental officers on how to answer the phone. She listens to phone calls, but without antagonizing people. If you know a company that does that, she's the opposite to them. And but she hears, people answer the phone, or they don't answer the phone. They go straight to a voicemail, or they're on a voicemail and then they hang up. And at least with the recordings, we get a couple of things. We get the number. We're able to capture the number even if they've hung up. But they've already made the decision to go. We also get to hear what they're saying. So when they say this call is recorded, it's recorded even if we're not talking to you. So we can hear them, and they're saying, "Geez, these people are taking a long time. Do you think this is the right practice for me?" So, but back in the old days, I learned that the who was ringing on your phone was a legal document of keeping a record of who rang, what the conversation was, be it dental patients, be it business calls, be it labs, be it couriers. We wanted to make sure. So we used to on paper keep, time of call, who it was, But the important thing was it a new patient? Was it an existing patient? Did they make an appointment? Did they not make an appointment? Because again, back to sports, we were keeping batting averages. We wanted to know how many new patient calls were coming in, and we wanted to know where they heard about us from, so that we knew, did they get a something in their letterbox, mailbox. You call it a mailbox. We call it a letterbox. Car park's the other one. We call it a car park. You call it a parking lot. Yeah. They go car park. Okay. Well, you can put motorbikes in a car park too. But anyway, letterbox. In the old days, did it come from yellow pages? Did it come from newspaper advertisements, things like that? So we wanted to know what was giving us which results as well. If we were getting a lot of people calling and not making appointments, but they were coming from a certain type of advertising medium, then we thought, well, that's pointless. And so we wanted to know those results. We also wanted to see what time of day people were calling, because we wanted to make sure we had people to answer the calls at that point in time as well. And also we had each person keep their own log, and whereas now we can do that with our recordings because we know who's answering because they say their name. Thank you for calling Active Dental. This is Jane. How may I help you? So they introduce themselves and we go, what's Betty doing answering the phone? Betty's not batting well. And then we find out that Betty is actually the steri nurse, and she just answers the phone when she hears it ring 3 times and hasn't been answered. She just picks up the one in the steri. She's got no idea what she's got to do, but she thinks she's helping, but she's actually losing money because somebody out there is just about to pick it up. But anyway, so we want to know those phone numbers. But getting back to that question, how many calls don't get answered? 38%. 38% of calls to a dental practice either go to a voicemail or they don't get picked up, and those people never ring back. So that's 1 in 3 or nearly 2 in 5. And if you think that, if that's a new patient and that's a new patient worth $500 and that happens once an hour, that's 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 40 times $500, that's $20,000 a week. That's $1 million. It's $1 million in your practice that never sees your appointment book. That's if your patient's worth $500.
Yeah.
If they're worth $2,000, that's worth a heck of a lot more money.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's just a number. Wouldn't you want to know the number if you're missing a third or even a fourth of your phone calls or a fifth of them? Whatever it is, you improve it a little bit, it's going to have exponential impacts. What did Wayne Gretzky say? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So you're missing shots. And remember, these people are trying to get into your office. So I think knowing the phone number is probably, or knowing the number of calls is the first one. Then you can trickle down and see how many were answered, how many were converted, all that kind of stuff. And it becomes much more diagnostic work, right? Like when there's a gap between this one and this one, now you can go to work on improving that a little bit, right? So
Wayne Gretzky also said, I don't play for where the puck is. I play for where the puck is going to be.
I like that a lot. And you see that with everybody. I mean, LeBron James, any great athlete, any great business person, they're always living in a space. You're like, how do you see that? They're just, I can see that opportunity. That's good stuff.
Speaking of ice hockey, we don't have that down here because we don't have snow, so we don't have cold. And I was really surprised with ice hockey because I've actually found they actually use a puck. I just thought it was like a fight. And somebody said they went to a fight and a game broke out, and they were talking about a hockey game.
You guys got Australian rules football. I've watched that. You guys are tough as nails. Don't think for a second there's sports that doesn't need explanation. I think you got to come up here and drink beer up here with me in Milwaukee, and I got to come down there and hang out with you in Sydney.
I've been watching Australian rules football. It's got no rules. I don't know why they call it Australian rules. There are no rules. I can never work out whether it's holding the ball, trapped on the ground.
Those guys are
part of our country, but yeah.
Yeah. Now, I love that. Let's go to number 3. What's your third essential number when looking at this year? What do you think that number is?
Oh, this is easy. Are all patients being seen each day in your office? Are they leaving with their next appointment being made for them?
Right.
Because now this comes back to an old Rich DeVos phrase, I think, from Amway. And you're probably too young to remember the Amway company, and people used to want you to join Amway, and they'd give you a cassette tape to listen to. And then they'd come around and they say, have you listened to the tape? And you go, no, I haven't listened. They go, that's all right. I've got another one for you. And you go, I haven't listened to this one. Don't worry. Let me come around and give you another one. And it wasn't about the tape. It was about the appointment. And his phrase was, the purpose of an appointment is to make another appointment. And that was our philosophy in our practice. If somebody had an appointment, then we knew where they were. And if they didn't have an appointment, then we have to chase them up. And nobody likes to go chasing people up. And I learned this one from a real estate agent, or you call them realtors, selling my house. He rings me up. This is way back in the 90s. He rings me up. He said, I've got some people coming around to have a look at your house at 9 o'clock in the morning. Now, this is 20 years ago. I got a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old. And I said, or they're at home with my wife. I said, 9 o'clock in the morning, you know what that is? That's like arsenic hour. He goes, that's all right. Easy to change an appointment, not so easy to ring them up and make one. He said, I'll just ring him up and just say, look, that 9 o'clock appointment, we can't do that. Let's move it to 3 in the afternoon. So he didn't do a good job selling my house, but he did do a good job in reinforcing that an appointment that is made is harder to cancel than an appointment that is never made. Cool. And so, making sure, but my team, again, back in the pen and paper day, end of the day, they'd have to give me a list. And they go, we haven't got time to be making this list. I said, you make everybody an appointment, you give me a blank piece of paper and say, look, everyone made an appointment. If job's done. And guess what? Then who loves doing follow-ups in a dental practice? Nobody. So again, if you make the appointments, no follow-ups. So everything's, you've got a full appointment book because you don't allow people to leave with, what are the lines? Don't know what I'm doing, haven't got my diary with me, got to check with my husband.
It's okay. We got to keep you in our schedule. We're a growing practice and you're a valuable patient. If we don't get you in here now, there's a lot of things that could happen we don't want to have happen. So I totally agree with you. I think you got to have something in the schedule. They also have to have something focused about, even if it isn't the actual particular day. So
Sorry to drag this one on, but the reason why the patient leaves without an appointment, it comes from the treatment room because the dentist hasn't told them what will happen if they don't get it done in the time frame that he should be recommending. Like the dentist is too wishy-washy. The dentist says, we'll do that in a month. And she goes, the patient goes out the front and she goes, I've got an appointment tomorrow. And she goes, oh no, he said in a month. Well, guess what? It's never getting done. And so, I remember my neighbor, she was, this is 10 years ago, and she was having to have teeth removed and and implants put in. And she said from her dentist, and I said, weren't you having your teeth cleaned? And she goes, oh, no, he never pushed that. And I said, really? She said, but if he'd have told me that if I didn't get my teeth cleaned regularly every 6 months, every 3 months, that I was going to have, my teeth removed and a bolt put in my head and then a cow bone in my jaw, I would have been there having them cleaned, but nobody told me. So yeah, it's a team effort, that one, but that's an important number.
Absolutely. I think I would have kept my appointments or made the appointments. The important thing, I think you're absolutely spot on. People have to have the why. Why you need to come in. I think a cleaning is a terrible reason to come back. But, Mrs. Jones, we're going to have you looking fabulous for the wedding coming up in the spring. I got to get you in my schedule. And, it's part of the relationship side of things. So I totally agree when it comes to next appointment. Now, number 4, what's your number 4 metric looking forward to this year?
We're looking for where are new patients coming from. And of course, this determines our advertising budget. We want to know, and we've got to know this accurately. So, Kirk, I ask dentists all the time, how many new patients do you get a month? All right. Well, if they tell me their new patient number is a number that ends in 0 per month, I know they're not measuring. Now, I had a client in Denver, and she used to tell me, like, this month it's been 17, the month before it was 23, the month before that it was 31, the month before that it was 15. Every time, and she could give me months after month back. She knew them accurately.
Right. So you said if they give you 1 0, they're not telling you the truth. What if they're giving you like 2 zeros, or if it ends in triple zeros? Now we know they're lying, right? Like
that's on income. If you tell them how much income are you making, they say, oh yeah, I'm making about $10,000 a month. Yeah, that's a lie. The about is right. Yeah, that's the dream. I want to know exactly. I want them to say, this month it was 17,000. The month before that it was 18,000. I want to know that. But they give me round numbers. I multiply the round number out per month, and then I say, so that means you're doing about 2 million a year. Or they give you a range in a month, and you multiply that out, and that gives a $500,000 range. And you go, which one is it? So, I want to know exactly, what did you do last month? What did you do last year? What did you do? I talk about an associate that I had who took a branch practice to $1 million. I actually lie, because it was actually 994,000, but it was close enough to be $1 million. But still, I know that exact number. It was a shame she didn't get that extra 6 in that year.
Yeah. Now let me ask you, there's inherent challenges with finding out where new patients come from, because they don't always tell you exactly. Like, give us some thought processes on, because you do want to know exactly where they came from. They don't often come from just one source. Maybe they saw you over here and then they heard about you. What's your experience been, and then what's the best way to track it if I'm a dental office?
Yeah, that's really hard. So you've got to know the vague words. So the vague words back in my day were, it found you on the internet. Well, that's like saying, I found you in the phone book. It's just, where on the internet? What were you searching for? So you want to, you don't want to go through a 20 questions, interrogation style, but you do want to dig deep and just find out. And the other thing is that if they're referred by one of our valued patients, or they're referred here, let me go on that one. If they're referred by somebody who's not a patient, you want to reward that person as well. And you want the new patient to know. The best referrer in my practice, 28 years, the best referrer in my practice,
What?
It was one of my patients, and I'm not sure whether he was my patient at the time. He was a realtor. And he had a dental office that was renting off one of his landlords that was closing down. The guy couldn't sell the practice. He was just going to retire and close the doors. He said to him, why don't you talk to David? That old bloke came over. It was maybe 300 yards, came over. He said, I'm going to wheel my filing cabinet over to you. I'm going to divert my phone to your phone. And I said, what do you want for this? He said, I don't want anything. Just look after these people. Well, Kirk, in the next 4 years, 36 of those patients spent $884,000 in my practice. So who was my best referrer? It was the realtor was my best referrer. So sometimes people don't even realize that your best referrer may not actually be, it was one referral that came to 884,000. Now, I did buy that realtor a nice half dozen bottles of very good red wine, but it was still a very inexpensive referral reward for him. One of my best referrers referred a full mouth case that was done, over a period of a year of her boss. This woman was so nervous. She had a full clearance. I had to take the impressions for her dentures. She was sitting in my chair and I had to stand up. She would refuse to sit in the dental chair. But people say, why do you keep sending this woman Christmas cards and birthday cards? She doesn't come in anymore. She got no teeth. Said she was the best referrer. So you got to know exactly where they're coming from, because if you remember, what gets rewarded gets repeated. That goes for your staff as well as for your patients. But you also want to be knowing where you're spending your money. I also was practicing in the day when the yellow pages started to go from being this beautiful, big, thick book that you could prop your computer up on to being this tiny little thing with nothing in it. But I anticipated that trend because I started to see that the incomes were dropping, and I pulled out when I realized that, the money I was spending was just, there's no point spending money, chasing money that's not coming back. So you've got to know those things. I think those ads are working. A number of dentists I talk to say, I think my SEO is working. Yeah.
They don't know. Yeah, absolutely.
Nobody knows. Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's number 4. Give us number 5 as you look.
Number 5 is very simple mathematics. And that is, we've got to know if we're doing treatment every day, we've got to replace that treatment with treatment planned. Whatever our production is, if we're not finding treatment to do to replace the treatment we are doing, we're going to go broke. All of a sudden, we're going to be sitting around. So whether that means that we're underdiagnosing, I'm not saying overtreat or overdiagnose or strip mine. That's not what I'm saying. But you need to know what a new patient's worth, and you need to know how many new patients are coming in to be able to, and also an existing patient. What's an existing patient worth? How much revenue do you make out of your hygiene room on existing patients where they come in and there's a broken filling here, a bit of decay under a filling that you spot on an X-ray? You've got to know those numbers so that you can forecast. I've heard that a very good hygienist can pre-diagnose and help a dentist find $5,000 to $6,000 worth of dentistry a day just coming out of hygiene. That's opposed to someone who's just a prophy hygienist who just prophies and doesn't look. But I always go back. You're a sportsman, Kirk, so you've been for ultrasounds and X-rays, and supposedly the radiologist is the only person who can diagnose. But if that radiographer doesn't know how to take the image, the radiologist is going to be pretty cranky that they've missed the shoulder or they missed the fetus. They know what they're looking for. I can remember, the radiographer saying, I can't tell you whether it's a male or a female to my wife, but she knew, and your hygienist knows this stuff. So use your hygienist to spot the stuff, take the photos, prepare the patient so that you can work as a team in diagnosing and presenting treatment. But you do need to be able to replace the treatment, And so you've got to know, are you getting a lot of Invisalign cases? Are you getting a lot of veneer cases? Are you getting a lot of whitening patients? Are you just getting a lot of restorative? That practice that I got given, that dentist, he never did a crown in his life. These people walked in with these patches on. He was the best patchodontist I ever saw. And these people, they said, I remember one chap saying to me, he said, my teeth have never felt stronger since you've crowned all my back teeth. He said, now I feel like I can eat anything.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I totally agree with you. I think the bottom line is just got to believe in what you're doing and do the right thing at the end of the day. You've seen this, David, where dentists are more interested in probably doing wallet biopsies than actual, treatment diagnosis to determine what they're going to suggest with patients. But as you develop a practice, as you start to learn all these things, you find at the end of the day, just tell people the truth and train your team around you to see what you're seeing. Although they can't diagnose, that's totally cool. I love what you're saying. Now, I do have a question. So as we put all these together, I love what you've listed out here. I totally agree with you. Now, I'll play the role of a dentist. I'm like, David, you're trying to help me. I totally get it. But what if my team doesn't like tracking numbers? We're at the beginning of the year. You've heard this one. We set these goals. I don't like tracking. My team always thinks it's about money type of a thing, or we get started and we don't finish. Like, what are some guidelines as we look at a brand new year? How can I do this right, David?
Well, you've got to know the numbers again. You just got to come back to that principle that if we don't know the numbers, we're just what did somebody say? You're winking in the dark. All right. Yeah, you know what you're doing, but nobody else knows what's going on. Right. And the team's got. If we know the numbers and we can forecast, guess what that gives us? That gives us a successful practice. The successful practice is able to employ people without them worried that they're going to lose their job because the practice is going down the spout. It means that it's a profitable practice, so the dentist is making some money, so he turns up happy, all right, as opposed to hoping and not knowing. Who wouldn't want to work for a happy dentist in a successful practice that's got lots of patients and the right sort of patients? Remember, Kirk, that you can, as your practice gets busier, you can start filtering the patients you want to see, and you don't have to be everything to everybody. That's what I learned in my practice. There was enough people who were happy. Getting back to the lawnmower, the guy who used to mow my lawns when in my home in Sydney, he mowed my neighbour's lawn, but he didn't know the lawn of the guy over the road. The guy over the road, I don't know what he was paying his guy, whether it was more or less than mine, because my guy did such a really good job. My guy took photos and put them on Instagram. My guy said that ours was the best. Mine was the best lawn that he knew of in our shire. He said, and he used to put it on Instagram. And it's funny. Now I live down here, but my kids still live up near where we used to live. I walked past there the other day and I said, that's not Markham's work anymore. Those people aren't using him anymore. I can tell. It looks like somebody's cut it. My wife tells a story that when her brothers were naughty, her father used to take them to the barber, and depending on how naughty they were, they'd either get a 0, a half, or a 1 haircut.
I love that.
And this is anyway, so that's what's happening. But, ultimately, if the practice is going well, Kirk, you can also pay bonuses, and that gets your team focused. And when you're paying bonuses, all of a sudden your team starts to look. Sure, we do get somebody ring up. They get caught at work. They get caught at school. They can't get there for their Friday afternoon appointment, which is fillings. And all of a sudden they look and they say, the software says you're going to be under your goal. And they say, well, look, if we bring Mrs. Smith from next week in and she's getting a crown, we're going to hit the goal. Guess what they do? Whereas if they're not getting paid a bonus, they go, oh, we got an hour off.
Right.
And that 1 hour off, 1 crown a week, what's a crown? Let's call it $1,000. There's $50,000 a year gone.
I agree. Sometimes you just got to put a system in here where we can take a look at the score, keep some, accountability requires accounting. So it's good to have some numbers and just something good to look forward to this year. David.
Sorry, one last thing. If your team doesn't do it, guess what? Go back to sport again. Somebody's not playing for the team. Guess what? They get traded.
Whoa. I don't think I've heard it said that way in a while.
But that's what that's what you got to do. You got to get them off the bus. You got to get them off the bus. So you've got to look for you've got to look for the terrorists in your organization as well. And one happy team. Yeah. Again, my wife coaches dental teams. She did a call with a new practice the other day and on Zoom. And it's like the Brady Bunch, 9 boxes. Everybody's on their phone in different rooms in the office. So it's not 9 people in one room where none of them can hear at the back. They're all on different phones in different rooms, and the people who aren't there, that's what you want. And that's what we see. The teams that are invested, the investment pays off for everybody. I like that. I just made that up.
Hey, investments, we require returns or often get returns. I like what you made up too. I think that should be the next podcast we do. Make the investment. And so the investment, so it gets a return on your team. David, this is fantastic. What last thoughts do you have on numbers or anything as we look forward to this year?
Well, Kirk, those who know me know that my passion outside of dentistry is golf. And, a golf scorecard, you just have to put down a number for your score on the hole. There's no line. They don't want a sentence. They don't want a description. Oh, I just missed this part. I'll hit it in the trees. They just want the number because the number usually tells the story. If it's a par 4 and you get a 4, that means you played at least 1 or 2 good shots and you're going okay. If you get a 10 on a par 4, that tells the story. Numbers tell the story. So you can't just say, oh, I think we're doing well. I think this. You've got to know. And what gets measured gets improved upon. What gets measured gets rewarded. We've just got to have the numbers.
Amen, brother. Amen. So I'm going to have you back again and again. We're going to talk about different things every single time. But David, if somebody's listening for the first time, I know you have this Ultimate Dental Report. Tell us what it is and how they can go and find your report. So it's a 30-some page report. Tell us what's in it.
Yeah, it's a 36-page report, Kirk, that I did a couple of years ago. The information's all relevant. Jim Rohn says there are no new fundamentals. The basic fundamentals of business are the same. That's my advice to anyone. Don't look for new books. Just go back to the old stuff. Jim Rohn, Kennedy, Earl Nightingale, Clement Stone. Those guys. It's all wonderful stuff. But so is this Ultimate Dental Report, the Ultimate Dental Report. So just go www.ultimatedentalreport.com and you can download the report straight away. 36-page report. From that, you can find out how to contact me if you're interested in my coaching or you're just interested in signing up for my blog. Go to my website, which is theultimatepatientexperience.com. All the information's there. And of course, just Google me on Amazon for my book, or Google my website for my book as well. So there's lots of ways to find me, lots of free stuff. The paid stuff's better, but the free stuff still works, but it doesn't work as well as the paid stuff. Keeping you accountable will get you there faster.
Awesome, brother. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you so much. I know we've gone way over time, but like I said, I'm going to have you back again and again. We're going to talk about different concepts. So make sure you check it out. Check out David Moffet's ultimatedentalreport.com. You can check out his book too. It's on Amazon. And then, David, stick around while we say goodbye to everybody else. Thank you guys for watching and listening to the Best Practices Show. Do us a favor. If you enjoyed today, which I know you did, just hit the share button, share with your friends. Keep sending us suggestions for things that you want to see from David or other guests that we have on the show. And until we see you next time, keep watching the Best Practices Show. You guys enjoy the rest of your day.